In this video, I want to tell you about a couple more fallacies of relevance. And the first one is called appeal to the people. Appeal to the people is essentially a peer pressure type argument. The kind of argument that where psychological pressure is put on you to accept what other people believe. And there are a couple of forms that peer pressure can take. Maybe the kind that we see most often is an inclusivist kind of peer pressure. This is sometimes called appeal to consensus or bandwagon fallacy. This is the kind of thing you hear when someone says, well, more people agree with what I say than with the opposing view. Or almost everybody thinks so. And the problem there is that there's almost no subject where you can take what most people say and then just bet on that being true. Even the Earth being round is something that, at one time most people thought the opposite. So the fact that most people believe something is not a good reason to think it's true. There's another kind of peer pressure that sometimes gets used, and we'll consider this appeal to the people as well. Exclusivist peer pressure. This is where the group that you're pressured to try to fit into by believing something or accepting something, instead of being the majority, it's some kind of minority that's somehow seen as desirable. So, for example, it could be sort of financially elite group. We see this in advertisements sometimes when the ad tells us that very wealthy people like this product or something. So the famous case of the Grey Poupon mustard commercial, right? Where you have the Rolls Royce, the guy's in the back eating, and the chauffeur's in front driving, and he's got some classical music on, and he's eating in this very sort of rich guy way. And then the next thing, another Rolls Royce pulls up next to him, and the window comes down, and the other rich guy leans over and says, "Pardon me, but would you have any Grey Poupon?" To which he, of course, responds, "Oh, but of course!" And he passes over the Grey Poupon mustard. They zoom in on it, and it's Grey Poupon mustard for those who appreciate the finer things in life. And if you think about the psychology behind how that's supposed to work, right? You can't afford a fancy car that you can't afford a chauffeur driving you around while you're in the back eating this luxurious food. But if you buy Grey Poupon mustard, and if you eat that mustard on a regular basis, it'll be as if you were part of that group. As if somehow if you met these guys, right, you would fit in because you eat Grey Poupon mustard. I always want, when I meet like some really rich people, I always want to ask them, "Hey, you guys like Grey Poupon mustard? I like Grey Poupon mustard too," And I'm sure then they'd say, "You should join our country club." It's supposed to pressure you into sort of thinking that way. I mean, of course, at the end of the day, it's absurd. Whether you're going to fit in with the group or not, it's still it's not a good reason to believe that Grey Poupon mustard is better than other mustard. But that commercial was very successful. Another kind of exclusivist pressure comes in the form of saying, well, this is what the cool people think, right? Most people don't know about this. You probably never heard of it, this band before, the Sea Monkeys, but that's all the more reason why they're really underground. So that and then you're supposed to think, oh, they must be good. I want to fit into this cooler minority by checking out this band or whatever. And one important feature about appeal to the people that distinguishes it from a fallacy we'll talk about later concerning expertise is that it's not claimed that this peer group has like special expertise. Then that would be a different kind of argument. If I said that, this guy is an expert on mustard, right? And he says Grey Poupon mustard is the best. Well, that's different from just trying to say this is what the cool people, this is the kind of mustard that the rich people eat, or this is the kind of music the cool people listen to. So that's appeal to the people. The next kind of fallacy is called ad hominem. And for this one, I'm giving you the fancy Latin name. All of these fallacies had Latin names because people wrote in Latin when these sorts of topics were first explored. This one still keeps its Latin name more commonly than the others. That's probably because you know it's used in legal circles, so you've probably seen on court TV, right, where the lawyer says, "That's ad hominem, Your Honor," and this is the same fallacy. This is the same issue. This is a kind of fallacy that happens in a debate context. So it only happens when someone's responding to another argument, an opposing argument, or testimony. And we have to say different things about when it's addressing an opposing argument versus when it's addressing testimony. Let's just deal with the case first, where we're talking about addressing an opposing argument. So somebody makes an argument. Let's say it's an argument that it's going to rain. Somebody says, "Well, it hasn't rained for the past 3 days, and it's the month of May, and so it rains every couple of days in May, so it'll probably rain tomorrow." Right? Just I don't know why a person's arguing this or why I want to oppose it, but just for an example that's easy to deal with. So now I want to oppose that argument. So I want to address my opponent's argument. But in order to defeat my opponent, I could say something logical, something about the logic of his argument, but instead I bring up bad things about my opponent or perceived negatives. And there's various ways of doing this. The psychology behind this one would be, right, if I can get you in a mode where you don't like this person, if I can get you to dislike my opponent, then you may be more inclined to disagree with what he's argued, what he said. So I say, well, my opponent here says that it's going to rain tomorrow. He gives you this argument. But will you look at the ridiculous shirt he's wearing? You know, somebody who has no sense of style, of dress at all. And look at his face is dirty, right? So I bring up these things about him. Now I'm giving you absurd examples again. The point is, you know, to see the problem. This is going to be much more cleverly disguised in your sort of real life situation. I say something like, you know, he's got a drinking problem or something. I guess that's absurd, but it can be done in a way that's disguised. The kind of attack is worth pointing out because it's not that it makes it a different kind of fallacy or anything, but it's worth making a note of different avenues of attack because then you can recognize them more easily. So what I just did is called the abusive ad hominem, where I just bring up negative character traits about the person. There's another kind of ad hominem, which is the circumstantial ad hominem. With circumstantial ad hominem, I bring up somehow he's got a motive or got a psychological reason for arguing this conclusion. So maybe I say, well, my opponent over here, this guy says it's going to rain tomorrow. He's giving you this argument. And but do you know that he's selling umbrellas? He's got umbrellas there in his book bag, and he's going to try to sell you umbrellas at an inflated price. That's why he's doing that. So, you know, just ignore his arguments. And the thing about this is that if the person is giving an argument, right, we got to distinguish between giving you testimony and giving you an argument. If this person has given an argument, nothing I could say about him is relevant to whether the argument's a good argument or not. So even if he is selling umbrellas, and he just literally came up with this reasoning, just as how can I get people to buy umbrellas? I know I will try to argue that it's going to rain tomorrow. So he came up with this argument, but now it's either a good argument or a bad argument, right? And the fact that this is how he came up with the argument doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's selling umbrellas, you know. Or I could argue, I could say that you know, he's got a phobia about rain, right? I've got a report here from his psychologist who says he's got a phobia about rain, and so of course he's always arguing that it's going to rain. He's like a stopped clock. It's Still, that's not relevant. It's not relevant to whether his argument is good or not. In fact, even if I tell you that he's a pathological liar, and I can prove it, and I say, here's a certificate from a psychologist, he's a pathological liar. No, you're going to believe that it's going to rain because this pathological liar just convinced you? Well, even if he's a pathological liar, the statements that he made are those are common knowledge, right? We all know that it didn't rain for the past couple of days, let's say. So there's really no issue of testimony there. So it's not relevant to whether his argument is a good argument or not, even that he is a pathological liar. Here's where the point about testimony comes in. Because if he wasn't giving us an argument, if he was giving us testimony, somehow, we're indoors and we can't see if it's raining outside, but this person comes in and tells us, I was just outside, and believe me, it's pouring out there. Then certain things would be relevant to whether we should believe that testimony. Now the ad hominem question gets a little more complicated. If I say, he's got umbrellas in his bag, he's going to try to sell you umbrellas, and that's why he's testifying that it's raining outside. Well, then that's relevant to whether we should believe his testimony, right? If he does have a motive to lie, then, we have to worry about that. It doesn't mean he is lying, but it's something we have to worry about, right? However, if it was an argument with no testimony involved, then that wouldn't be relevant at all, right? And if I bring up something that's not relevant to whether he's telling the truth, then we consider that an ad hominem attack on testimony, not a legitimate attack on testimony. If it's legitimately attacking the testimony by saying he's probably lying because he's got to sell umbrellas, no fallacy, no foul there. But if I say, look at his face is dirty. You're going to believe this dirty-faced guy who comes in and tells you it's raining? Well, then that's not relevant to whether he's telling the truth. So then we consider that an ad hominem argument against the testimony. So if it's testimony, it depends on whether the points I bring up are relevant to the testimony being truthful. If it's an argument, well then automatically anything I say about the person is just ad hominem fallacy because it's not relevant to whether the argument's good or not. Now there's another kind of attack. The circumstantial attack brings up the undermining testimony question. But the tu quoque attack is a similar attack, but in this case, I'm accusing my opponent of hypocrisy. So this is the kind of case where, father-son conversation. The father tells the son, you shouldn't smoke because smoking is known to cause cancer. Smoking you'll mess up your lungs, and you'll have to cough up phlegm every morning if you smoke because you get this gunk in your throat and your lungs. It's horrible. It's bad for your circulation. Gives him all these reasons why you shouldn't smoke. Well, and then he puffs on a cigarette, right? While he's making this case that you shouldn't smoke. And then, of course, how does the son react? Says, I'm not listening to him. That hypocrite smokes 2 packs a day, right? So now he discards the argument, right? Because dad's a hypocrite. Well, of course, the problem here is that it doesn't. Even if dad is a hypocrite, right? He is a hypocrite if he's sitting smoking while giving this argument. But it's still a good argument. Those are good reasons why you shouldn't smoke. So the person giving the reasons is a hypocrite. It doesn't mean anything about the argument. So this is very common when people react to, say, an argument about charity. Someone says, we should be donating a lot of money to charity. And immediately the question comes, well, does that guy donate to charity? The guy who's arguing that? And, it doesn't really matter. Because even if it's interesting that the person's a hypocrite, but it doesn't defeat the argument. The argument can still be right. Okay, so that's appeal to the people and ad hominem. I've got a couple more relevance fallacies coming up in the next video.